Welcome to another episode of the Gay Barchive Show, where we explore gay history one bar at a time. I'm your host, Art Smith, and today we'll be chatting with author Ron Naples. Ron has written a two-part gay erotic fictionalized memoir under the title My Last Dance with Auntie Brie. They explore his history in the 70s and 80s in the gay bar scene in the Northeast, as well as San Francisco. So, welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you, Art. How are you?
I am doing very well, and it looks
Great.
like you're sitting there at an exotic California beach with a couple of giant books on your shoulder.
That's right.
So, I started this project about 6 years ago, and the whole kind of force behind it, the driving force behind Gay Archives, was to preserve the memories of the bars and to talk about how they influenced our lives as individuals and as a community. Obviously, your experiences in the gay bar scene have had some impact on your life because you've written two books based on those experiences.
Absolutely.
Now, they're both entitled My Last Dance with Auntie Brie. One is obviously the original, and the other one is part two. And they kind of cover the journey that you went through as a gay man in the 70s, and then with the second book in the 80s and forward.
Yes.
So your early experience, you were born on the East Coast, right? You're from Connecticut.
Yes, I was born in New Britain, Connecticut. The first book is about the late 70s, which is when I came out. And then it brings you up to the present in San Francisco, which is where I live now.
Now, what was the first you mentioned in some of the information about the book that you talk about in the original Auntie Brie book? You talk about your first gay bar experience. Where was that first gay bar experience?
The first gay bar I ever went to was in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was called The Warehouse. And just recently, I discovered on YouTube that it's been demolished, which is of course sad to me. But it took me forever to find some information on where it was, what was the address. But apparently, it's no longer. It's just a vacant spot now.
Yeah, and that's been a challenge all throughout this project for me because back in the 70s, gay bars were not publicly known. They were not, they didn't advertise in the yellow pages. They didn't get the front page coverage in the local newspaper. A lot of times they were kind of clandestine locations. They were, either unidentified by a sign at all, or they had an entrance at the back of the building,
Right.
or, so that's been a challenge all along. And that's what I really love about this project because the more I do it, the more people I talk to, the more places like the warehouse, we find people who actually went there and can contribute to the history of what was, available in the 70s or even before.
Right. In my book, I say it was in the middle of nowhere, and it actually was, which was why it was so hard to try and find any facts on the location. And as I did my research, I found out that it had gone through many different names after it was the warehouse, which was the original gay bar. And of course, it was all underground. Nobody knew about it. And this was my first experience into the scene. It was an amazing discotheque. And of course, this is the late 70s and disco was booming. And that was my whole intro to coming out and being in gay bars. And it's where I actually met Auntie Brie, which my book talks about. And the book, in a couple sentences, is my coming out story. And it's an homage to Auntie Brie, who was a drag queen.
So the description I've read for your book calls it a gay erotic fictionalized memoir.
Right,
But
right.
Auntie Brie fictionalized in the book, or is she pretty much represented true to form?
Well, everything in the book is true, however, embellished. And it took me quite a while to come up with those words because it isn't verbatim, true to fact. It's based on the reality that I experienced.
Which is basically what all of our oral histories are, because
Yeah,
nobody ever remembers exactly what happened.
right, right,
Um, the the famous comedian Bruce Valanche once said, "If you remember it, you weren't there."
right.
So it's it's kind of expected with oral histories and and especially in situations like this, because everybody had their own perspective. And if you look back at the 70s, what you would consider a large, amazing, fabulous, incredible bar might no longer fit that mold, because most of the gay bars back then were kind of shady little holes in the wall. um,
Absolutely.
and so if you did have a big enough club to have a substantial dance floor and a show stage, you were in awe. You were just amazed that as a gay young man, you had a place to party that was that fabulous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Warehouse was, I think, the only discotheque in Hartford. There were others, but they were straight. So this was definitely a unique spot and very underground. You never saw an advertisement for it. You had to know somebody to get there, which was my best friend at the time from high school who introduced me to it. So that's also in the book. But yeah, it was a very magical time. I mean, lucky me to be able to find it and be able to party there with all the other gay people. So we had a lot of fun.
So how old were you when you went to the warehouse for the first time?
I think I was either 17 or 18. I mean, it was right after high school. Um, so yeah, I have to go there. This is like 1978, 79-ish. Um, and the truth is, I think I went in my senior year, but I'm not exactly sure. And this is where the book starts to become fictionalized because as I was writing it, I couldn't remember the actual facts. So there you go. So it's based on what happened, but it's not exactly what happened. The fun part about writing it too was I got to tell the story the way I wanted to tell it, not exactly the way it happened. So I was able to glorify things that weren't exactly glorified. So you know how that goes. Um,
Now,
uh,
if someone you had met or seen at the
right.
warehouse were to pick up the book and read it, would it be familiar to them? Are there enough details in there that they would say, "Wow, yeah, I remember that. It might have been, a little different. My version might vary a little bit, but I remember that place. He's spot on. That was the warehouse."
Well, what's so cool about it is when I wrote it, people from the past started appearing. I want to tell you one story about a drag queen I worked with in Provincetown over 40 years ago. And she saw the book on Facebook, she read it, and she called me. And, I'm thinking she was long gone. But yeah, people crept up from the past. They were so amazed that I was able to capture that in such detail and celebrate it because somebody needs to talk about how much fun it was. And there's not much history out there on the web about it. And that was only the beginning. The bars that followed after that, again, people from the past do creep up because they remember. I had one guy call me in tears. He's like, "Oh my God, I don't believe you wrote about that. I love that bar." So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. When I found you with your website too, that inspired me to do even more research. And now I'm thinking I probably should have done more research before I actually wrote about it. But there's enough in there to make people remember. Um, and like I said, it's embellished, of course, because we don't want to talk about the bad parts. We only want to talk about the good parts, which there were plenty of.
Now, and around the same time frame, and with you being, in Connecticut, so close to New York City,
Yep.
some of the descriptions of the first book mention Studio 54. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
somewhere that you went? Did you go to Studio
absolutely.
54?
Yeah, I'll give you the thumbnail version. I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and my roommate was a bartender at Studio 54 after we graduated. So he was able to get me into it. As you know, legend has it, it's almost impossible to get into. But because I knew somebody, I was able to get into it, and I experienced Studio 54 in its prime. So yeah, amazing. Beyond what I ever thought, discos could be.
And that was in the early days. That was in the days of Steve Rubell and Ian Traeger, where it was still
Absolutely.
the true Studio 54, not somebody's watered down revival, years later.
No, I know. The thing is, the when they were there, that's when you needed to be there. It closed in 1979, and after that, new ownership. No, it didn't work. It wasn't the Sodom and Gomorrah that it was known for after that.
And
So,
and just
but
just to be clear, Studio 54, although one of the most iconic discos in the world, was never designed to be a gay bar, but it was more like the type of, inclusive, everyone's welcome if you are cool enough
right,
uh, to be there. And Ian and Steve both wanted to have gay representation in the mix because the gays were almost, in some respects, like entertainment. They were like eye
absolutely.
candy. They were more animated. They were more into the themes and the fun. So it was not specifically a gay bar, but it was a gay bar where a lot of people made a lot of incredible memories.
Yes, yes. There were well, my recollections of it, it was very gay. It's just you never heard about that. I mean, it was more concentrated on the celebrities, which is true. But yeah, there was a good gay crowd there. I mean, I made a lot of friends there, and everybody was accepted, which again was part of the magic of that time because gays were still in the closet. I mean, it wasn't, like it is today. So you could go there and party with straight people and everything was fine. We were all there for the same reason to have a good time.
I think disco in general had that kind of impact on the gay scene because if you look at the gay bars prior to the mid 70s, uh, like I said, a lot of them were kind of, clandestine. They were dark. They were not well known. And they were exclusively gay and very often restrictive. So a lot of the bars would not allow men with cologne in or women with heels in or
Right.
whatever. They were very niche market bars. When we came into the disco era, with the popularity of the music and the flamboyance of the bars, the incredible sound systems that started to show up, the incredible lighting systems, the disco balls, the energy, it started to attract some of the straight clientele as well and kind of forced an interaction. But the people that were coming in were typically a little more open minded. It wasn't going to be your, Bible thumping grandma who was
Oh,
going to
no way.
show up at Studio 54 and try to preach to you while you were on the
Right.
dance floor. It was the kind of cool, hip, younger, preppy, straight people that were
Yeah,
starting to enter the scene. And it kind of gave us a little bit of opening the door to more acceptance in the community outside of just, gays.
absolutely. The other thing I want to add to it was the when you went to Studio 54, you dressed up. I mean, there were gowns, there were suits. This is in the beginning of the whole gay discotheque era. As time goes on, you'd have the shirtless guys in their Levi's dancing. But in the very beginning, it was like New Year's Eve. You dressed up to go out and disco. And that's what I remember mostly about 54 was how fashionable and how high end it was there. Those days are long gone. I just recently went to the Eagle in San Francisco, and I was telling my partner, talk about a difference. I mean, oh my God, nobody dresses up anymore. And it's soup to nuts. It's just every kind of man you can think of is there. In its prime, it was leather, but those days are gone as well. It's more of a melting pot when you go out. Yeah, it's not anything like it was when I was coming into it.
I'm seeing that a lot too. And fun fact, I didn't know this when I first started this project, but I believe the original owner of the San Francisco Eagle was Bob Dameron,
I don't know if that's
the,
true. It
the
sounds like it
guy
could.
who made the travel guide.
Yeah,
He owned several clubs in San Francisco,
yeah,
and I believe the Eagle was one of them.
that might be true. Yeah, I don't know. I remember the Bob Dameron guide. In fact, I do mention it in the book because at that time you didn't know where to go. It wasn't like you could look in a newspaper or, the yellow pages, if you will. You needed a gay guide to find out where the happen spots were. And my way was I always knew somebody that knew somebody. And that's how I found these places. So as my circle got bigger, I knew where to go. I knew where to hang out. And I did it all. I mean, I did the whole, as you said, from the deep dark corners to the big glamorous clubs. So I'm very fortunate to have experienced all that. And I think I've written about it in great detail.
I came out about the same time as you did. My first gay bar experience was in 1978. And I'd had a boyfriend in high school who I didn't really know was my boyfriend because we didn't have that label. Um, I thought he was
Right.
just a good friend that I had sex with.
Yeah.
And um, when we went off to college, I went to visit him in Baltimore, and he said, "Let's go out to dinner." And we, had a nice meal. And he said, "Let's go across the street. There's a cool bar over here you might want to check out." Well, it turns out his roommate was gay and had told him about this bar. It was called the Hippo in Baltimore, and it was there for many, many years. I went there in '78 and it closed in 2015. So it was open about 40 years or so. Um, and things were very different then. Like you said, you didn't have the exposure, you didn't have a community, you weren't out to the world necessarily. Um,
Absolutely.
but you really celebrated those places that allowed you to be yourself and to meet other people like you and to socialize. And very often, I know back in those days it may have been different for you, but I went out almost every night of the week.
Oh, yeah.
um, Even if it was just for one drink after dinner so you could socialize a little bit, it was your way of connecting with other people that were like you.
Right.
um,
It was addictive, definitely. I also say in the book, this is pre-cell phone, pre-internet. You had to go out to meet people. You couldn't, hook up online. Um, so yeah, I was living with my parents when 17 or 18, and I wanted to get the hell out of the house. So you go to the gay bar to be with people like you, and pretty much everybody there was doing the same thing. Um, because in order to participate in the gay community, those were the kinds of things you had to do. There was no, you know, um, epicenter of where everybody would hang out. It was go to the gay bar. So, coming to San Francisco, well, let me back up. I was a houseboy in Provincetown, and that was my first initial being around gay people all the time. And it was wonderful. And you actually get to the point where you assume everybody's gay because you're just surrounded by gay people all the time, which is of course not the truth. Um, and then in San Francisco, the Castro, same thing, where all the shop owners and all the bar owners, even the grocery store, everybody's gay. So it was kind of a utopia to experience when you're a little boy from Connecticut, which I was, and you were constantly looking for that, environment to thrive in.
So, what was the inspiration for you moving from P-Town to San Francisco? How did that happen?
Oh, wow, you have to read the book. No. Um, well, let's see. The thumbnail version is I was performing with Auntie Brie in Provincetown. I was a drummer, and she had a cabaret act, and she took her cabaret act to San Francisco. So I went with her to San Francisco, and that was my whole introduction to the West Coast. So yeah, yeah. And who knew that 40 years later I'd still be here? Unfortunately, she is not. But as so many people in the book are no longer here, it was a thrill to bring them back. It really was. Um, and you remember just what wonderful people they were and how they shaped you and your life. So there you go. So Auntie Brie is in the title because she was really the catalyst to the whole thing. From meeting her in my first gay bar in Hartford to performing with her in P-Town and having the opportunity to come to San Francisco and perform at her show, which, by the way, was at Finocchio's, which is another bar that's long gone. I'm sure you remember that.
Well, I don't remember it from being there, but I do remember it. I'm familiar with it. And I think they also, didn't they also have a Finocchio's in Los Angeles for a while?
Well, there was a bar in LA, West Hollywood called La Cage Fall,
Yeah.
which I also write about. And I had a drag queen friend there that did share. And this is share like gypsies, tramps, and thieves share way back then. So whether there was a Finocchio's in LA, I'm not sure, but La Cage Fall was a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. I've spoken to several people who have performed there over the years. And yeah, Lacage was definitely a big influence in the drag scene on the West Coast. And Finocchio certainly
Yeah.
is one of the most iconic. In fact, there's even a couple of bars. One friend of mine that I know from Nashville, Tennessee, who was a bar owner there. He owned one of the, I think, the first gay drag bar in Nashville, Tennessee, which was called Watch Your Hat and Coat Saloon. It opened in 1971,
Wow.
and in their ads, they refer to themselves as the Finocchios of the South.
Right,
So
right.
it was
Yeah.
kind of like the Cadillac of show bars.
Yes.
Um, and from the time that you moved to San Francisco, there's quite a few bars that are still there that have been there as long as you
Yes.
have.
Yes.
Twin Peaks is one of the oldest gay bars in the country.
Absolutely.
Um, Moby Dick,
Yeah.
Moby Dick, I think opened right around the time that you moved to San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah. I could go on with 440, which used to be Daddy's, which is still there, and Badlands, the Midnight Sun, the Edge. All these bars are still thriving.
The
It's pretty
Eagle, you
amazing.
forgot the Eagle.
Oh well, the Eagle is more south of Market. My
Oh
mind was
yeah,
on Castro.
Castro.
Um, the south of Market is a whole different scene. As I said, back in the day, it was more leather. But today, it's so different. I mean, it's just everything, anything goes now. Um, I kind of miss that though, because the Eagle to me was intimidating to go to because that's where you saw the quote unquote real men. Um, but yeah, today it's drag queens and young people and everything. So
I'm seeing that in a lot of Eagles. We have one in Wilton Manors that is very mixed. It still retains its code room. So there is a section of the bar on weekends that is strictly enforced. You have to be wearing a harness or leather or whatever,
right,
shirtless. They
right.
still maintain part of the bar, but it's a big bar. It's an 8,000 square foot bar. So, you mix in a lot of different people there. The one in Atlanta actually has an upstairs cabaret section where they do drag shows early, like
Right.
from 9 to 11 p.m., um, before the leather crowd really rolls in. So
Right.
they fit that, you're seeing a lot of them that welcome bears
Oh yeah.
and um, pups. That's another
Yeah.
scene that we didn't have, 40 years ago. There was no pup scene really. And
Absolutely.
now it's kind of coming to the forefront. So you're seeing a lot of change in the scene. And I've had some people I've spoken to who are very upset about it. You've ruined the Eagle name. And then there's
Yeah.
others who think that that's the way of the future. If they want to survive, they have to embrace, the changes of our community, and they can't be overly restrictive.
Right, right. I noticed that when I go to the Eagle, the older men my age in their 60s or older, are still wearing leather because that's what they did when they were young, and that's what they're still doing today. Um, but the younger generation doesn't seem to dress that way. As I said, when I was younger, coming to San Francisco and going to the Eagle was very intimidating because there were motorcycles out in front, and everybody was older, bigger, hairier, muscular. It was a very exciting place to go, and I felt like I didn't fit in. But again, that was of a time. You don't see that anymore. And you mentioned Bear Bars, the Lone Star, which is up the street from the Eagle, is still going on Sunday beer busts, um, and it's a berry crowd, but not in the sense that it once was. So here I go repeating myself again. But I've always liked bears and Leathermen. That's part of the game. It's fun.
Yeah, I've noticed there's a lot of people that are huge Eagle fans, or things like the Eagle. The Eagle brand itself, by the way, is kind of iconic in the gay world because back in the day, as you said, especially when you're talking about the 70s and 80s, and there wasn't such a worldwide awareness of the gay community and the bars. The Eagle was a name that you could be fairly certain if you visited a big city, if you went to Cincinnati or you went to Chicago or you went to New York or you went to Miami, and you found a bar called the Eagle, you had a pretty good shot at knowing that that was going to more than likely be a gay bar.
Right.
And so it kind of created a mystique and a brand that, although they're unconnected, most of the Eagles are independently owned and have no relation to the Eagle nearby.
Right.
Um, they still followed a common thread. They all built that brand collectively without consulting with each other.
Yeah.
And you had quite a few. To my knowledge, it is the most common name for a gay bar to have ever existed. Um, I have cataloged about 65 Eagles around the world, and I don't
Yeah.
know of any other single gay bar name that has had that many incarnations.
Right. Well, when people hear the name, they have a visual of, what it's all about. And I think that's the reason why it's endured for so long. My first Eagle was in Boston, and it actually was a dance bar. And a lot of people don't remember that, where they had a front bar and then in the back was a dance area. And to me, it was very exciting because, as I said, I was coming from Studio 54 where everybody was in suit and tie, and all of a sudden I'm around these shirtless leathermen dancing to the same music. I mean, I'm like, which would you prefer? So it was very exciting. um, so that was my intro into, I think, more of the darker side of gay life. And I liked it. Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble. It was fun.
So if we were to compare the two books,
Mm.
the first book, which obviously is you're younger and you're new to the scene, and the second book, which catalogs more of what happened after you became fully immersed in
Yes.
San Francisco, um, what's the takeaway? Are there? How do you compare the two scenes? The Studio 54 scene to the Eagle scene. What
Right.
How would you categorize that?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is in the first book, there was no AIDS. It was, you would worry about getting STD and you could take penicillin and you were done. The second book, unfortunately, is in the 80s, and that's when AIDS was, on the front page. So it's quite different. I mean, I continued to party, but in a more careful way. You had to, because most of my friends from that era are gone. And I did go through as I've identified with other gay men from the 80s, a point in my life where I was beating myself up because I'm like, I did what they did and they're no longer here. So, where's the logic to that? So the second book is, I think, more serious. There's still a lot of fun in it. But the reality is it isn't a one big party like it used to be. And that goes for today as well. I mean, now we have people on PrEP, they're taking HIV drugs. None of that existed, when I first came here. So, yeah. So it's an evolution, I think, from the very early beginnings to almost the present. I take you up to about the 90s, maybe, yeah, maybe a little later. And I had to basically conclude what the evolution on what has happened in my life since I first came out till now. So there you go.
Now we know that there's a secret in the second book
Yes, there is.
that that had a big impact on your life.
Yeah.
Part of the story, as you're telling it about your experiences in San Francisco, involve meeting a man that you have decided to spend 4 decades with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did that happen?
Well, interestingly enough, um, he was a prison guard from San Quentin, and my fantasy man. Talk about, the eagle type. Um, he was newly divorced and coming out, and it was really a lot of luck that we came together and are still here today. Um, I often think that the only reason why it worked was he's older than I am. He's 18 years older than I am. And the reason why it worked was because he was as brand new to the scene as I was. So we were both exploring together. And yeah, there you go. So we're still together today, I can proudly say. And we've been through so much. Oh my God. Um, so he's pretty proud of my work. And I actually had him help me write part of the second book because he was in it so much. So I want to make sure I get the facts right. So
So let me ask you, while you're writing the second book,
yeah.
and you're, I'm sure, sharing it with him, and he's looking at it and kind of reviewing it. How many times did he smack you on the back of the head and say, "Bitch, leave that out," or "I
Right.
can't believe you're going to tell that story"?
Right. Well, see, that's where the fiction part comes in. You see how it works? I actually had an editor that told me if you put fiction in the description, you kind of save your ass because, you're not.
Nobody can sue you.
Yeah, exactly. And all the names in the book have been changed. And I was also advised to do that too, because not everybody approves me talking about them. What's fun is they know who they are. They're reading it and they're like, oh my God, but because I don't use their real name, it's a safeguard. I use my real name. That's the only real name in both books.
And we can
Um,
probably guess who Joe is,
yes,
whatever name you gave him. We can probably
yes,
figure out who that is just by the context.
yes, exactly. Um, it's fun because, like I said, those that were there, they get it immediately. Those that weren't there, it's an eye-opening experience. They're like, "Oh my God, you did all this? Is it really true?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it is." I mean, I got a hold of everything I could possibly get a hold of, and did as much as I could do with it. So yeah. I also wanted to back up a little bit and tell you that when I was a houseboy in Provincetown, I had a diary, and that was the whole beginning of the book. Years and years later, I opened it up and I thought, oh my God, this would make an amazing story. I forgot about all this stuff. So the diary was what inspired the whole book. And then the first book got such acclaim. I got like 30 Amazon reviews that were all 5-star within weeks, that it inspired me to write the second book. And the second book was actually harder because I didn't want it to sound depressing. Because as I said, you're touching on AIDS and the fact that the gay scene isn't what it once was. So
Right.
that took some time. Yeah. But
And
anyway.
um, San Francisco, New York, and LA kind of were the epicenter of the HIV epidemic. So, I was going to bars in the deep South at the time that we started hearing about HIV and AIDS in the news. And I know in those cities in the South, Nashville and Atlanta, people didn't really take it seriously
No.
because it was a disease that affected people who lived in the Castro or people who lived in the Village in New York. It did not affect the guy who lived in Midtown Atlanta.
Right.
And so your the community in San Francisco, had it not only got it was hit harder, but earlier, and so it impacts most of the timeline of the second book. Whereas in other cities like Atlanta, it would have been the late '80s before we really even started taking it seriously.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm sure you remember the term gay cancer.
I do.
That's what they were calling AIDS in the very beginning because it was only, a gay man's disease, which is part of the whole tragedy. So, yeah, yeah. People in the Midwest were like, well, if you're in New York or San Francisco, you have to worry about that. But otherwise,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
And I remember in Atlanta, I had moved to Atlanta in the early '80s. And when I was in Atlanta with a female friend of mine, she was going to get some. I don't know if you remember when they used to do this, but they used to make diet candies. They were like chocolate treats, but they were for people who were on a diet to help you lose weight. And we went into one of the stores and a drugstore, and she wanted to buy a box of these chocolates. And the brand name, because the whole idea of HIV and AIDS was so insignificant to the world at large, they were called AIDS, AIDS.
oh wow,
And I remember when I first saw that, I thought, wow, that's creepy. And they
it,
soon after that, I think, changed the name. But can you imagine, seeing a product like that today?
I
It
know,
would never make
wow,
it on the shelves. But back
wow,
then, it was not a term that anybody thought about. GRID was, I think, one of the first names that was used, gay
right,
related immunodeficiency. And
yeah,
they just
yeah,
assumed you had to be gay to get it. So all the straight people didn't care. They were like, what? I'm not worried.
right, right. I get a little political in the book too because I needed to tell the history. That Reagan, of course, did nothing for 5 years. And by then, the epidemic had gotten so crazy out of control. There's a lot of speculation that if he, tapped into it sooner, um, because the CDC wanted nothing to do with it and all that, that maybe it wouldn't have morphed into the awful thing that it is today. But yeah, AIDS was a gay man's disease and a gay man's problem. And I remember that. Um, I luckily was with Joe at the time, and we stopped going out. It just got that scary. You'd go to the bar and you'd always hear about somebody that passed, and the bars were nearly empty. And yeah, it was a pretty awful time. And that was like the mid 80s. And by the 90s, it started coming back. Um, and like I said, now today there's drugs. So if there were drugs then, unfortunately, it wouldn't have taken the toll that it took. So, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So when you were in the course of writing this book and you were going through your notes and your journals and all this stuff, and you were kind of sifting through the memories, was there one person, one character in the book that you had maybe forgotten about and suddenly put a huge smile on your face and said, "Oh my God, I can't remember. Jerry was such a fabulous person. I had so much fun with him, and I had completely forgotten about him." Was there
Yeah.
anybody like that surfaced?
There were several. I mean, this is the beauty of writing a book because you're writing one chapter which opens up thoughts that you haven't thought about in years. And as I said earlier, I've reconnected with people I haven't spoken to in 40 years. And a lot of them are like, well, why didn't you write about this? And why didn't you write about that? I mean, there's just so much more that I told, that so much more than what I told. Through their friendships, they reminded me of things. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Auntie Brie because all through my gay life, she was such a catalyst to getting me to where I had to go. And the book really is an homage to her. I mean, she was pretty fabulous. And she wasn't one of those drag queens that lip sync to records. I mean, she did characters. Remember that? Where they would actually sing and imitate people. And, she did all the big stars of the day. And it was a lot of fun to be in her show. A lot of fun.
I know that
So,
was a big thing back then to have actual entertainment. A lot of the older drag queens, especially when you go back to the 70s and 80s, um, did that. They not only had production numbers with backup dancers and things like that, but a lot
right,
of them sang. I think I was interviewing a couple of people who had performed at La Cage in LA, and they both told me that yeah, we when we were auditioned, they expected us to sing live. They didn't want canned
right,
tracks of music and me just flapping my lips. They
right,
wanted real entertainment, and that was a big part of what made drag such you know a vital part of our community.
right, right. I think the lip syncing to records is an art itself. But of course, if you're able to imitate the uh, celebrity that you're doing, it's just so much more better. And Auntie Brie, like I said, she did all the stars from the day, and celebrity icons like Betty Davis, and it was a lot of fun to be in her show. And she was good. She was really good at what she did, and obviously people took note. So there you go. But the very beginnings of my writing, she was just a character in the book. And as I got more and more into writing it, I thought, you know what, she needs to be in the title because she really was, a huge part of my coming out. So there you go. So hence my last dance with Auntie Brie. And you can kind of figure out why it's my last dance with Auntie Brie. I won't put a spoiler alert, but yeah, in the second book, it explains her demise. So there you go.
So, what advice would you offer to other people, not only of your generation, but of younger generations about, how they should express and preserve the memories of their days in the bars? What advice would you give them as far as writing a book or doing a blog or a video?
Well, what I've come across time and time again is the younger gays are very into today. Some of them have no recollection of the past, which angers me. But I suppose if I was, 19 and young and beautiful and horny, I wouldn't care either. Um, but what I do say to them is, you have to really treasure what you got here because one day it's going to go away. And, be respectful of the older gays that have, pioneered for you. And just remember that it all goes away. It does. It's not forever. I mean, again, when I was young and you're dancing at 54 with Liza, you're not thinking it's going to go away. You're just in the moment and there you go. It's going to be this way forever. So, as an older person, I've become very thankful that, wow, I did all that. And if only I knew how fabulous it was when I was doing it. So, yeah, to the young people, I'm just like, be respectful and also take care of yourself. Oh my God. It really beats me up when I see somebody that's young and beautiful and they're taking too many drugs or drinking. And it's like, oh, you're destroying, everything. So, yeah. Um,
Well, I'm kind of relieved because through the Gabe Archives Project and my Facebook group and the people I interact with, I've actually discovered over the last several years that there are more young people who are starting to show an interest in the history.
yeah,
Because if you go back 10 years, gay marriage is legalized. Everybody thinks, oh, we've reached the top of the mountain. We're here. We've done what we need to do, and we can just sit on our ass and do nothing.
right,
And in the last couple of years, the last year particularly, we've seen that that can all turn around in a heartbeat. And I think what that's doing is that's inspiring a lot of these younger people to realize that, yes, the gay bars and the gay community are an important part of their life. And that's the people that are going to continue to fight for them to have the rights that they thought were etched in stone 10 years
right,
ago.
right,
And unfortunately, just like the AIDS crisis back in the 80s, it's lit a flame under a lot of people's butts to start taking a more active role and start getting more involved in history and in preserving what they have now. So
right,
I think in some ways we are seeing a little bit of a turnaround in the younger community that maybe we did not expect.
right.
Um, but that combined with the fact that we were all locked up for a couple of years for COVID
Yeah.
gave us a real longing to have our community back. We realized how much we were missing.
Right. What I find extremely interesting too is the fact that young gay people, even in high school, are going to proms together. They're so open and they're so proud. And I guess there's a little bit of jealousy there because in my day, you were in the closet. You weren't out and about like they are. And they're together for a few months, they're getting married, they're exchanging rings, they're taking these amazing honeymoons, and I'm thinking, what's that all about? Um, so good for them. But again, I think they're taking it for granted because they don't realize how difficult it was for the older crowd to come together and find a partner and live together and be gay together. So yeah, there you go. Most of the people that are attracted to my book, I find, are my age because they want to read about what once was. Um, I'm not too sure if young people are buying it. I don't know for sure, but the emails and the texts I received are usually from 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and onward. I even got a beautiful email from somebody that was 89 years old and told me he just loved the book and it brought him right back to where he wanted to be. And I thought, isn't that great? That's so cool.
Yeah, and I
So
think you'll continue to get that kind of feedback. I know one of the most rewarding things to me about this project is that I hear from people all the time who say, "Oh my God, thank you so much for preserving this memory, for bringing back, the glory days when I was young and hot and active." Um, and that's so rewarding just to know that you've played a part in putting a smile on somebody's face, whether it's just for
absolutely.
one day or for 5 minutes. You've brought back some happiness to their lives just by telling your own story. You're not
Yep.
even going out of your way to do it. It's just sharing your memories. And they look and they say, oh, yeah, I remember those days at the Eagle. I remember those days at Studio 54 or, those days in Ptown or whatever it is.
Right.
And hopefully it will inspire others to tell more stories.
Yeah.
I keep seeing, I get approached by a lot of publishing companies pitching their new books that they've got coming out about gay history or gay bars or whatever.
Right.
And it's amazing to me how many of them there have been out there and are,
Right.
how much they're growing.
Yeah.
Some are fictionalized like yours. Some of them are very much designed to be more factual, historical novels. Um, but there's a whole slew of books out there now that are addressing this topic. And it's very, very refreshing to me because I get to go in there and look and read the little blurbs about, these bars that I've never been to.
Right.
I
Right.
interviewed Gina Gatta from San Francisco, who owns the Damron Corporation, which is still in existence but doesn't publish books right now. She lives in
Yeah.
San Francisco, and she talked fondly about Amelia's and Trocadero Transfer,
Oh,
that are bars that could easily be lost in history. And one guy that I interviewed a couple of years ago, he reminisced about the very first gay bar he stumbled into when he was 15. At that time, they weren't as restrictive at the door.
right.
And he went in there at 15 years old, and it was in downtown Nashville, Tennessee in 1952.
My goodness.
How many people are out there who can tell you a story about a bar they went to 72 years ago?
That's amazing. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
important that we capture these memories. Now,
Yeah.
you had never written a book before the first Auntie Brie book?
No. And I was very, yeah, it was a very scary process because I thought maybe I'm just not good enough. I did hire editors to help me get through it. I went through quite a few, and I found either they were helping me with the fundamentals of constructing a novel, or they wanted to change it and make it their own. So it takes time to find somebody you click with that wants to help you write your story without taking it over. And then again, I didn't want it to be porno, which at one point it was. I wanted it to be literary, but there's porno in it. And I had to learn the craft of how I can write like gay sex scenes and not sound, slutty. Um, so yeah, it was about a 5-year process of working with people and rewriting and editing until I finally got it right. And then I had to take all the courses in the fundamentals of grammar and all that stuff because you don't even realize how bad you write until somebody else looks at it and there's red all over the page. So yeah, it took a while, but I think I nailed it. I think it's pretty good. So with all that behind me, the second book was easier to write that way, and I kept the same editor. But the subject of the second book was more difficult to cover. So there.
So you started this journey in your late 50s, having never
Yeah.
written a book before,
No.
and now you've got two of them that are out,
Yeah.
that both tell the story, somewhat fictionalized, somewhat erotic, definitely gay, about your experience in the bar scenes going back to the 70s.
Right.
Um, would you encourage someone, a friend of yours, maybe a younger acquaintance, 10, 15 years younger than you, to go through this process?
Right. It's kind of an amazing thing now because I get Facebook messages all the time from people saying, I want to write a book. Will you help me do it? And, I'm no literary scholar. It's just, I tell them that it takes more time than you can possibly imagine. And you have to be patient. You have to write every day so you don't lose the momentum. Of course, it helps to have professionals, guide you. But publishing is like crazy. Oh my God. It's a real nightmare to send out cover letters and try and, hook people in to help you publish. I published it myself on Amazon. Um, before it was published on Amazon, I did have a gay publisher that put it out there and destroyed it. They just cut it up and edited it so much I wasn't happy with it. I was happy because they took interest in it and put it out on the internet, but I wasn't happy with the final product that they put out there. So I had to wait for 3 years to terminate the contract. And then I put out the version I wanted on Amazon. And that's when it took off, when it was finally my version. And I was kicking myself thinking, for 3 years, I'm thinking I need a professional publisher to put it out there, but look what they did to it. So there you go. So the books that are out there now are on Amazon, and the audiobook, which was just released last year, is on Google Play. So I have the paperback, the hardcover, the ebook, and now the audiobook. So there you go. You have every format you want. And they're all my versions. So I'm very proud of that.
Now, if somebody wanted to buy this book, can they find all these links on? Do you have a website of your own?
Yes. Yes, there's the My Last Dance with AuntieBrie.net with all the links on it. And of course, I'm all over social media posting that. But yeah, if you go to Amazon and you put in the title, you'll find me. So that's good.
Well, I
Yeah.
will definitely put up a link to your My Last Dance website
Yeah.
in this video so people can see it there. And we'll definitely put it in the YouTube listing as well so people can find it that way
That would
when
be
they look at it.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because to me, it's important that people have, you know, when I first started this project, I ran into a couple of, we'll call them gay historians who believed that whatever information they uncovered about gay history was proprietary, that they owned everything and it should keep all the secrets to themselves so they could be the one to share them with the world at their leisure. And my view is completely the opposite of that. I think the whole goal is to share as much information as you can and give people the resources to find what they want to find.
Yes.
Um, I don't understand why I would want to say, oh, well, just reach out to me and I'll tell you how to find the book when I can just give you the link. So I hope that people, watch this interview and are intrigued enough to learn about not only your personal history, but the scene, the gay scene in the 70s and 80s that you experienced and that you recount in the book. So I
Yeah.
definitely want people to have that information available for them.
Well, I thank you very much. And when I found gay archives, is that how you say it? Gay
It
archives? Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I immediately had to latch on to that because I thought, oh my God, this guy is like right where I'm at. So I thank you for that too, because that was our connection. And I'm always looking on your site and find it fascinating. It's nice to find somebody that has a passion for it as much as I do.
Well,
So
I
thank you.
welcome you. I welcome you to go to the group and post little posts in there if you want, even if you just want to be little teasers, like put something in there like, oh, I was at Studio 54 dancing with Judy Garland or whoever, Liza Minnelli. Judy Garland was dead by then.
Yeah.
I was dancing with Liza Minnelli. What's your favorite memory of Studio 54? And
Right.
include the fact that it's mentioned in your book, so
Yeah.
people will get a different, a different hook. So
Yeah.
you can go drop hints about any of the experiences and the bars that you talk about in your books, and maybe reach another audience, and maybe find more people that want to look at it and read it. And
Well,
I
thank
wish
you. I will.
I wish you
Yeah.
all the luck with it. I thank you, Ron, for taking the time to talk to us about your book and about your life experiences. And I would say that I would wish you and Joe another 40 years, but that's kind of unlikely for me to even be around 40 years to see that. So, but I hope everything goes well with you, and wish you all the success in the world.
Okay. Thank you so much.